Here. I'm currently based in the Netherlands. The title of my talk is called Channel Me Perfect, the importance of app notifications and delivering them right via notification channels. So if you want to find me on Twitter or X, that's my username there, Ahmed underscore Tekiwa. And then I guess a bit about me. So as I said, I'm a software engineer in Android. So I work at a company called Ball. And Bol is basically an online retail company. We operate in the Netherlands as well as in Belgium. And I actually used to live in South Africa. I relocated 2 years ago. I used to stay in Cape Town. I worked for Luno before I left South Africa. So I was at Luno for about 3.5 years, and then got the opportunity to move to the Netherlands. I'm also a Google Developer Expert in Android. And what that basically means is that we are a set of developers around the world who are recognized by Google. And this is basically for all expertise in various Google technologies. My technology is Android. And so Google recognizes that in the way that we give our talks, the way maybe we could have a YouTube channel, we could have a podcast, we could have workshops, we could basically have open source software and so forth. So that is actually what I do regularly. So I've got open source software. I sometimes feature on YouTube channels, and I like to give talks. So part of me just giving talks as well is I'm also a mentor. So if any of you actually are interested in becoming a Google Developer Expert, you can feel free to reach out to me either on LinkedIn or on Twitter. I'll share my LinkedIn URL at the end. And yeah, so in the world right now, the Google Developer Experts program started in about 2011, thereabouts. And ever since then, we are currently just over 1,200 of us in the world. So don't let that number scare you. It doesn't mean that it's impossible. It just means there's a lot of work that you can do in order to become a Google Developer Expert, and I can definitely help you with the information that you might need. So as I said, that is my Twitter handle, Ahmed underscore Tekiwa. Okay, so to get into the crux, the agenda for today. So I'm going to talk about the world of constant updates, and what does that actually mean? Then I'm going to touch into a brief history into Android notifications. Then I'm going to give the introduction of what notification channels are, and as well as the benefits. Then I'm going to walk through the code. So the code will be split into two parts. So I'll first start on setting up a Ktor server. I'll also explain what Ktor actually is as a notification backend. I will then touch on setting up Android to receive Firebase messages from the backend. And then I'll touch on creating notification channels. Then finally sending a notification on Android. Okay, so let's get into it. So world of constant updates. So the world today, right, as technology has advanced throughout the world, you've seen that things are not always the same as they were maybe even a decade ago. A decade ago we didn't have AI, or at least we had a glimpse of it, but not exactly as developed as it is today. So technology has definitely advanced, and because of that, the world has now become heavily reliant on being connected to each other, connected to technology of all sorts. So the world today is definitely hyper-connected. Now, because of this hyper-connection that we actually have, notifications have become the lifeblood of our lives, of our smartphones. We rely on these notifications. And why do we rely on them? Well, to be able to be informed, to be connected, to stay engaged with the apps and services that we rely on. And what are these services? For example, in social media, we have Facebook and Instagram, and we rely on notifications for friend requests. We want to know when that friend followed us. Unfortunately, we don't have an unfollow notification. Maybe it's a good thing. And so, and then we have notifications for messages, for posts. So when people comment on your posts, event reminders, or when your friends or people that you follow have gone live on Facebook or Instagram, you also want to have a notification about that. Then on Twitter, you get notifications for new followers, for mentions, when someone actually mentions you in a post, for retweets, for direct messages, trending topics, breaking news, and so forth. Then you've got news type apps. So these are a different category of apps, and people actually subscribe to these. People actually want these type of apps. So for CNN, for example, you have breaking news alerts. You want to know exactly when something happens in the world, and you want to have that immediately. So for example, an earthquake, a strike in California, and thankfully we don't have earthquakes here, or at least not as much. And then personalized news recommendations. So for example, new developments in the tech industry, you want to get notifications about that, or to just get a daily news digest of what is going on in the world right now. Then New York Times, for instance, breaking news alerts, notifications for reading lists, so articles that you may have saved, new issues of subscribed magazines or newsletters. Then you go to productivity. So this is another category of apps. So you've got Gmail, and most of us actually have Gmail on our app, on our phones. And for Gmail, we basically want to know when is the new email that you've just received. You want to be told that this email has now come into your inbox. So you get these reminders as well for upcoming events as well. And also important emails like the ones from your boss. You obviously don't want to miss those. And then you have Slack, for instance, which is also another productivity app. You want to have new channel messages or direct messages when someone sends you a message personally, and then mentions or reminders or deadlines as well. And then you've got Todoist, which is also another type of productivity app. And with this, you want to get reminders for tasks with due dates and share tasks or projects. Then you've also got health and fitness. So as you can see, the categories are endless. And these are the type of categories that people care about, right? So with health and fitness, you're getting reminders to log your meals and notifications, reaching daily steps in an app called MyFitnessPal. Or in Headspace, you want to get reminders to meditate. And then, so this basically just follows the Android ecosystem. And this just basically means that we have a diverse landscape. So the Android ecosystem itself is the most popular mobile operating system globally. And maybe I'm biased because I'm an Android GDE, I don't know. Some iOS developers will say no, iOS is the most popular one. I'll stick with Android, thanks. So it boasts a diverse ecosystem of devices and users, and the diversity is unique. And because it's unique, it provides a unique challenge for developers. Because now it raises the question, how can I deliver both informative and related notifications to each individual user? And this is where these notifications actually came into play. So I'll just give a brief history of Android notifications. So in the early days, this was basically the simple approach with Android 1.0. Back then it didn't have a code name, so it just called Android 1.0. So then notifications were simple and straightforward. So just the title and just the body. It was just simple like that. And it was primarily used to alert users of incoming calls, messages, as well as app updates. Then a few versions later, it got a bit more improved. They started having what are called rich text within the notification body. So within Android 4.0 Ice Cream Sandwich, notifications became more interactive and visually appealing. You could have images, videos, and action buttons in the notifications. So now developers could actually do more with these notifications. But there was still something missing with regards to these notifications. And so with Android 8.0, which is Android Oreo is a code name, the notification channels were introduced. And so this basically gave users an unprecedented control over their notifications. It allowed them to customize the importance level, the sound, the vibration, and the visual effects of each and every channel. So what are these notification channels that I actually talk about? So brief definition. Notification channels on Android can be thought of as an organized folders for your app's notifications. With these, notifications can be grouped into different types of notifications together, giving users fine-grained control over how they want to be notified. So what can they actually offer you? So personalized notification experience. So users can tailor their notification settings to their own preferences. They can also receive the alerts that matter to them. Then reduce clutter. So notification channels help declutter the notification shape by grouping notifications into categories. And I'll show you later what that actually means. Then you actually have improved control. So users actually have granular control over how they're actually notified. So you're introducing the ability to block notifications from specific channels and allowing certain notifications from other channels. Then you also have enhanced privacy. So notification channels can help protect user privacy by allowing users to control which apps can send the notifications and when. So you can say, okay, during this particular point in time, I don't want to be disturbed. Or maybe it's okay right now to actually have notifications, so you have that control. So this here is actually based on a true story, and I'll tell you soon. So imagine this guy here, suave guy, in a bar, partying with his friends, and then he receives a notification on his phone. He notices that the notification itself is from his bank. And then he's like, oh, I received a bank notification. He's busy partying and he's enjoying his life. And he's like, oh, okay, this really must be an important notification because my bank sent me this notification. Only for him to realize that this notification is a promo app. Hey, why don't you sign up for one of our features that we offer? Meanwhile, he was thinking there was something wrong with his bank account. True story, it actually happened with me. I do have a bank app that does this, that doesn't use notification channels, which I'm going to touch on. So notification channels or categories on Samsung. Okay, so Samsung kind of calls them differently. So as you see here within Instagram, you have got all these notification channels, all categories. So you've got direct and you've got the Instagram ones. And with these, you can actually decide whether you want to allow notifications completely for that channel, or you can actually just turn it off. And you can even go ingrained as well and decide which type of notifications per channel you actually want to enable or disable. Then for LinkedIn, they don't really have the categories like Instagram does, but as you can see, there are a lot of them. So other updates, invitations and messages, jobs and opportunities, live events, audio rooms, news and articles, and you can see the list goes on. So these are different types of categories, these are different types of notifications that you can get from LinkedIn. Then from Uber, for instance, so you've got notifications that will tell you promotions and recommendations, which is what I just touched on now. And then you've got taking a ride. So you obviously want to be let know when your Uber driver is coming to you, and you want to know when your driver is actually coming. So you don't want that same app to notify you when there's a promotional notification, for example, because you don't want the same notification sound, or you don't want it to vibrate when a promo notification comes through. So this is where these types of fine-grained control comes into play. So with the driver nearby updates, I can then decide that I'm going to allow the notifications. I can choose whether I'm going to have an alert or I'm going to have it silent. I can then choose to show it as a pop-up, or I can choose to have a sound, vibration, even the type of vibration. You can also choose it as well. You can also have lights as well if you want on your smartphone. So these are the type of fine-grained control that you can have with notification channels. So the ideal scenario is basically this lady now has now ordered an Uber, and the Uber driver gets the notification on his phone, and then she has been notified that the driver is actually coming. She can actually see the Uber driver coming, and now she's following a ride within the car, and then she can finally make a payment and so forth. So this is the ideal scenario. You don't want to have promo notifications alerting you when you actually don't really need them. So now I'm going to touch on the code walkthrough. So here, this is basically what is called the Firebase Cloud Messaging. And this allows you to be able to send push notifications to certain devices. So you can actually send them to Android devices. So I will be showcasing the Android part of the Firebase Cloud Messaging architecture. So the first part, and this is basically your typical scenario, okay? You're going to have an organization that's going to have a backend server, okay? The organization will then maybe store a list of users that will basically subscribe or use your software. And then from time to time, you want to let these people know, your users, that there's a certain notification. Maybe it's an app like Facebook. You want to let them know that they now have a new follower. You want to let them know that someone has commented on their post. So basically the backend or the server controls this, And then in my case, you could then send this notification instruction to Firebase. So this is the two there that you see there. So Firebase will then act as an intermediary. Firebase will then process this request. Firebase Cloud Messaging will process it and send it off to one of three channels. So either an Android transport layer, or an iOS layer, or web push layer. And then finally, using what are called notification tokens. So every single device will have a token. And then the device will then receive this notification when it actually arrives. So I will be showcasing this process here and how I actually created a demo app pertaining to this. So the first part is Ktor. So I use Ktor, which is basically a Kotlin-based backend server. It's actually a server that you can use as a backend if you want to. And then I created a sample, very simple backend app using Ktor, which I'll showcase shortly. Then I integrated Firebase Cloud Messaging. Okay. So what my Ktor application does is it sends a request to Firebase Cloud Messaging, and then my Android phone, in this case it will be my emulator, will then receive this notification. So to basically start off, you create a Firebase project from the Firebase console. It's actually a very simple wizard. You give it a name, and then you create, and then it will generate it for you. From there, you will actually need what is called a private key. So for your Firebase admin. So you're going to use Firebase admin on your Ktor server. Then it's going to give you a key, which you need to make sure that it's private. No other system, nothing should have access to this private key. It's very important, otherwise people will be able to hack your system. So make sure that you keep this securely. Okay, so you have this stored on your server. So Ktor is basically, you can create a synchronous client and server applications. Anything from microservices to multi-platform HTTP client apps in a simple way. Okay, so I basically use Ktor. And then if you want to write the code within Ktor, you could use something like IntelliJ. Okay. So then in my Ktor even has a website where you can even generate a project. And then you can configure all the plugins and then download the project as a zip file. Then you can actually start coding straight away. So this is what I did. I created just a basic sample app, and then I called it Channel Me Perfect, and then I downloaded that. And so when you then set it up, you then have to add the dependency. So Firebase admin SDK is what you then need to add. At the time of this, 9.3.0 is the latest version. And then you basically set up the Firebase auth config. So that JSON file that I told you, the private key that Firebase actually gives you, this is where you configure it. And then you basically set the credentials using Google Credentials, and then you initialize the app. This is as simple as it is in terms of just setting up the admin SDK. Then all you just need to do is set up the routing. What this basically means is when someone hits your server, right? www.example.com/send message. So if someone hits that URL, that route that you have in your app, what you want to do. So in my case, I set it up so that I send a notification. So when someone hits a endpoint, I then send a notification from there. And so I created two endpoints, one called send basic, which will be a post. So you can have a post, a get, and so forth. I think in my case, I changed it to be a get request. Then send Android data message, and I'll also share what that is in a bit. And then, so what it basically does is send basic will then get an instance of Firebase messaging, and then it will send a notification. Remember, this is just a sample app. The whole idea of this is to just send a notification to an Android device. And then what message actually looks like is, I'll set the title, and I'll call it this is a test. I'll set the body to say you're receiving a test message from the Ktor server. And then as you see there where it says set token, you can either get it from the request, or if you're creating a sample app, I basically hard-coded it and provided the token from my Android device. And then when you click, when you send it, it will then be shipped off through Firebase to the Android device. Then a data message basically is different from a notification type message, and it basically contains a lot more information. So in the case of Facebook or Instagram, there's a lot more information they want to send to the devices. So So this is the type of notification that they could actually send, and it's called a data type message. So I basically created a list of random notification channels, and then I put the title, put the body, put the channel ID, and there's a whole list of parameters that you can use using put data. You can literally create a list. And I'll share the URL for my code at the end, by the way, so you can always see this. Then you set the token, and then you send the message to that particular token. Then for Android, this is the part now that basically talks about this particular talk. So you basically set up Firebase. So Firebase is what is called a bill of materials. And this basically means that there's a whole list of dependencies that fall under Firebase. And remember, Firebase has got Crashlytics, messaging, and so forth. So maybe you don't want to keep track of all those different versions. So you use what is called a BOM, a bill of materials. And so as you see there, I'm not defining a version for Firebase messaging. I'm not defining a version for Firebase analytics because it's fetching it from the BOM. And then I set up Firebase messaging in my Android manifest file. And all I just do is I create a file called messaging service. Then once I've done that, I can also define a default notification channel. Now, in your messaging service class, you just basically need to make sure that it extends Firebase messaging service. And there are two methods that you just need to focus on new token and on message received. On new token is basically that every single Android device has got a token that will be assigned to it. So this particular phone here and your phone won't have the same token. They're going to be two totally different tokens, and that's because of security. So this token is always rotated. So whenever things happen, if the user decides to reinstall your app or make some drastic changes to your app, they're going to have a new token assigned to them by Firebase. So this function there will fetch the latest token, and you can then take this token and maybe send it off to your backend server. So this is what you can do there with that token. Then on message received is the important part. Now that's the fun part about this one here, where you then receive a message from Firebase, and then you do something with that message. So this is what I'm going to be showcasing now. So on message received, you'll get a message of type remote message, and in there is going to contain the data that you're then going to be using to display the notification to a user. So I then created a function called handle message data, and then give it the message as well as the data information. And then the remote message is of two types. So remember I said there's a type called data, and there's a type called notification. So in my case, I want data because I'm going to be sending a whole lot of information to my Android device. And so I want the Android device to handle this information, and I'm going to have it within this get data. Or if you just want a simple notification, you can just have it within the notification part. And then, so the three parts will be defining the message title and the body, creating the notification channel, or use an existing one, and then creating the notification. So the first part, which is getting the title and the body. So the title, you can either get it from the request, or you can define it as message, you can get it from the notification body. And then we're going to create the notification channel. So I've created a whole bunch of notification channels. As you can see, they're just trivial ones. And I'm imagining a TV show app, which I actually have, by the way. And so I could have a channel called New Episode Available, Actor News, Box Office Hits, and then each channel will have a channel name, a channel description, and then what to do when the user clicks on their notification. And then to create a notification channel, you just basically need a channel ID, and then you then use the notification manager to then try and generate this notification channel. So I then created a function called create channel, and then I pass in my channel ID, or I can just give it a default notification channel ID. And so the channel name, as you can see, I will either give it the one from the server, or I can give it a default channel name. So this is what it will look like in the settings. So the channel name, as you can see, is called Actor News, and then there you can see it'll be written twice, and then just below it will be the description, which is stay up to date to the latest news about your favorite actors and actresses. And then the user can then decide if they want to enable this channel or whether they want to disable it. Then to create the channel, all you just do is notification channel, pass the channel ID, the channel name, as well as the importance. So should the user always get an alert every single time, or just use the Android system to decide whether this notification is important or not? Then you also give it a description, and then you create the channel, and that's what it will then look like. So when you've created a whole bunch of channels, this is what they will then look like. So my app then created all these channels within the sample app. Then when you create a notification, you just basically need that channel ID, because from version 8 onwards, you need a channel ID in order to be able to create a notification. Then you just need the title, the body, and the click action, what to do when the user clicks on the notification, and then a notification manager. So here you just set the title, set the body, and then you can even set an icon. So in this case, you could use your app's icon, or whatever icon that you want. You can then decide what to do when the user clicks on your notification. In this case, use what is called a pending intent. So when they click it, it's going to launch something within your app, and then you notify the user. So when the user gets notified, then the notification then pops up like that in the notification drawer. Then when they click on it, either they can be redirected within your app and so forth. So this is basically the full flow of the app. So the app will basically show the sample app, and by the way, I will share the code right at the end. So the user can decide to enable notifications, right? To enable push notifications. And you need to ask your user's permission to be able to use notifications or not. Remember, we need to value our user's privacy. So in my app, we basically ask the user, hey, do you want to grant notification permissions to this app? And once they click grant permissions, they'll be asked a dialogue, and then this will be the Android system dialogue. So it will say allow or don't allow. So if my users are then allowed, I will then show them the Firebase Cloud Messaging token. Then I can then copy this token, and this is where I was saying I can either hard code it, paste it on my Kato server, or you can send it off via an HTTP request to your server. So my Kato server will then use that token, send it off to Firebase messaging, and then there you see my notifications coming through. So all these notifications are coming through from Firebase through Kato, and this was just a process of creating these notification channels. So if you want to know the resources, so there is one there for creating and managing notification channels. So this is the documentation there. Getting started with Kato. So if you want to build a Kato server, this is where you can start there. Receiving messages in Android. So this is the documentation, the full documentation. Obviously, I couldn't go deeply into all of this. Then if you want to touch on Firebase Cloud Messaging, the architecture, the overview, and so forth, that's the information there. Then the sample apps. So if you want to know how I created the backend Kato app, that's the Kato server code. And if you want to know the Android part, that's the sample code. And that is me. Thank you. So my username on Twitter or X is Ahmed_secure, and then on LinkedIn you can find me on that URL. Yeah. I'm not sure if we have any time for questions.
I think maybe one question.
Yeah. One question. Yes. Feel free to follow me on X or Twitter and so forth, and then I'll share the link there so that you can directly access it.
Guys, do we have questions? Any questions?
Hello, hi. I just wanted to know, I saw that on the notifications you could go to the Android version of it, the iOS notification provider, but also web push. So the settings for channels and everything that you spoke about with notifications, does that also apply to web notifications where, let's say, a website has that pop-up that says we would like to send you notifications, or for a progressive web app, that could also send you notifications. Do you also give that level of settings on the user side or like web push?
So I think with regards to that, I think it depends platform by platform. So for Android, for instance, they recommend that don't force users to have push notifications. So you have what are called dangerous permissions and you've got normal permissions. So they want to make sure on Android, that is, that users actually made aware that this app is going to be sending them notifications and you need to basically ask them for that permission. iOS could also have the same. I think they do actually ask users if they want to enable push notifications or not. I've seen it on some websites that actually say this app wants to send you notifications, allow or block. So I think it varies from site to site. The recommendation I think is always the same, to always ask users for permission, but then it comes down to will the developer adhere to that and say, okay, I'm going to be the nice developer again, I'm going to ask my users, I'm just going to show them the notifications. Does that answer your question? Okay. Okay.
Okay, guys, so now we're gonna break for lunch. You can give them a few minutes to finish up, and we'll come back and